And it's right.
Thank you very much, Sir Edward, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship once again. I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Swansea West, for bringing forward and securing this debate on the future funding for railways within Wales. He is more often in the chair than addressing it, so it is great to see him in his place. He has made a compelling case for a redesignation of the funding formula so that HS2 is considered as England only. As honourable and right honourable members have heard, this would mean that under the Barnett formula, up to £5 billion more would flow into Wales's rail infrastructure and put Wales on the same basis as Scotland and Northern Ireland when it comes to the consequentials of the Barnett formula. The honourable member for Swansea West makes this argument not only because he is a doughty and dogged champion for the people of Swansea and indeed the whole of South Wales. He also does so because he rightly identifies that the rail infrastructure in Wales is in pressing need of investment and modernisation. And this redesignation of HS2 as England only is sensible and practical way to release funds to upgrade the railway in Wales. It was, after all, one of the recommendations of the cross-party Welsh Affairs Select Committee. In its report on 6th of July this year, Sir Edward, the committee concluded, and I quote, "There is a strong environmental and economic case for substantially enhancing the rail infrastructure that serves Wales, and the passenger experience of slow services and inadequate stations only underlines the need for an upgraded network." And its conclusions, within those, the Select Committee reported that, and I quote, "Wales will not benefit in the same way as Scotland and Northern Ireland from the Barnett consequentials arising from the HS2 project. This is despite the fact that the UK government's own analysis has concluded that HS2 will produce an economic disbenefit for Wales. We recommend, therefore, that HS2 should be reclassified as an England-only project using the Barnett formula. Wales's funding settlement should be recalculated to apply an additional allocation based on the funding for HS2 in England. This would help to ensure that Welsh rail passengers receive the same advantage from investment in HS2 as those in Scotland and Northern Ireland. So it is very clear from the Select Committee's findings. It is indeed a compelling case, Sir Edward, and when the Minister responds, I hope he will not merely dismiss it out of hand, but instead consider carefully the many expert opinions in favour of such a move, including the recommendations of the Select Committee, as I've outlined, as well as a very thought-provoking speeches of my honourable friend, the member for Swansea West, my right honourable friend, the parliamentary leader of Plaid Cymru, and indeed the very invaluable contribution from the honourable member for Carmarthen East and Dinifer. On the opposition benches, we remain 100% committed to HS2. A Labour government would listen carefully to local concerns and place environmental factors at the heart of the project, but we would get on with the job at hand. We see new high-speed rail as part of a much larger modernisation of our railway. We would invest in new lines and stations, open up all parts of the UK and therefore the economy with affordable, efficient railway services, services that are accessible to all, including young people, people with disabilities and people on low incomes. Services which are safe and clean, services which are integrated across the transport system, walking, cycling, buses, ferries, light railways, trams and road systems. A great example, Sir Edward, would be the electrified metro for the Swansea Bay City region, which the honourable member for Swansea West has so ably championed and which I thoroughly support. We want significantly more freight off lorries, off our roads and onto the railway, and we would accelerate the electrification of the railway with a rolling programme of upgrades. The Conservative government's decision to cancel the electrification of the Great Western Main Line from Cardiff to Swansea was short-sighted, bad for the environment and should now be reversed. It is surely absurd, Sir Edward, that the Great Western Railway's Hitachi bi-mode trains run on diesel mode between Cardiff and Swansea, while switching to the less polluting and more efficient electric mode on the rest of the route in England, including as it goes through the town of Slough. As my honourable friend, the parliamentary leader for Plaid Cymru rightly noted, in England, trains can reach the magic intercity speed of 125 miles per hour. However, once on the Welsh side of the Severn tunnel, they have slow to average speeds well below 100 miles per hour, not so much levelling up as slowing down. Perhaps the Minister can update us on his department's stalled plans for electrification of the railway in Wales. The last Labour government, Sir Edward, rightly prioritised and invested billions of pounds into modernising our old, inefficient trains, our rolling stock. Having achieved that, the priority of the last decade should have been electrification of our rail lines. It is clear that the railway... yes, I will.
Very grateful to him for giving away. And of course, electrification, we heard from the member from Montgomeryshire earlier on the significance of the line from Holyhead into England. There's been no mention of that being electrified in the slightest, and yet we have some of the most polluting rolling stock along these lines because we have no alternative but to use those in many cases. Again, this is not the transport infrastructure of the 21st century, which we should be discussing just days before COP26.
I thank my right honourable friend, and she is absolutely right. Having recently visited with my family the wonders of North Wales, while it was lovely to be going along and seeing the scenic countryside on steam railways and the like, what I could see was sorely missing was an electrified rail network, and that would greatly benefit the good people of Wales, and that is why there needs to be greater investment within Wales, and in particular into electrification, because it is clear... yes, I will.
On that point, thank you very much for giving way. You just said that electrification will benefit the people of Wales. Well, my constituents already benefit from the electrification that's done as far as Cardiff. I myself regularly travelled into London both before and after I was elected as a member of this House, and I can tell you that train journey times are about 18 minutes shorter to Paddington from the main station in my constituency already, and the decision that was taken, whilst disappointing that electrification didn't go as far as Swansea, it did allow immediate investment in new, more comfortable and more environmentally friendly trains. So does he not agree with me that actually the people in my constituency in South Wales do currently benefit from the electrification that is already there?
I thank the honourable member from Bridgend for that contribution, but I would argue that while, given the location of Bridgend in South East Wales, while his constituents may benefit from the fact that the electrified railways come up towards Bridgend and Cardiff, it is absolutely absurd, I feel, that that people in South West Wales and further beyond are missing out on that railway. And I also find it very absurd, Sir Edward, that the honourable member for Montgomeryshire, who is now no longer in his place, and the honourable member for Bridgend, are actually arguing against more money for Wales. I'll tell you what, if people within Slough felt that they were missing out on resources, if they were missing out on funding, they would be up in arms. If the route that is going through, as I said, the wonderful town of Slough, was not electrified, you can bet your bottom dollar that the likes of me would be standing up here constantly arguing that we need more investment within Slough, we need more electrification of our rail lines, because that is the way that we are going to tackle the climate crisis. Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way on that point. Were the honourable member from Montgomeryshire still here, he could testify to the fact that, as the Member of Parliament for Bridgend, I, in his role as PPS to the Chancellor, I certainly am not arguing for less money for Wales, and he would be able to tell you just how many bids have gone in and just how much money we want. It's not fair to say that myself and the honourable gentleman who is no longer here to defend himself are arguing for less money for our constituents. What we are saying is that it is HS2, what our point is that HS2 does benefit the people of Wales, particularly those in Mid and North Wales. It benefits the entire economy of the United Kingdom. It is a British project, and therefore the assumption that it should be fully Barnettised is just simply not right. Does my honourable friend agree?
I thank the honourable member for Bridgend. But look, I would say that Wales is missing out. £5 billion from Barnet consequentials is not an insignificant sum. And as I've pointed out before, whether it's for the good people of Scotland and Northern Ireland, they are benefiting from that. And none of the track actually goes through Wales. And as has been argued, that while, whether it's Mid Wales or North Wales, may see, in terms of the links with Birmingham and Liverpool and Manchester, that the need to increase those. But ultimately, as has been pointed out in the debate, north to south, they are still relying on steam trains. You know, if that was the situation in Slough, you can rest assured that we would not be settling for that. We would be asking for more money, and we would be asking for our fair share of resources. And that's what I think the people of Wales are missing out on. That is why we within the Labour Party are supporting this proposal. And it is clear, Sir Edward, that railway must drive the green revolution just as it once powered the industrial revolution, and electrification is key. The old fragmented franchise model is dead, but the modern railway is still waiting to emerge. Properly funded, publicly owned and strategically led, the railway can become the clean, green, affordable and efficient pride of Great Britain. It can boost our economic recovery after COVID-19. It can transport us into the low carbon and post-carbon economy, and it can be a vital part of economic and social renaissance in Wales, but not without the investment we know is needed. I will give way.
Thank you so much for making an excellent speech. I'd simply like to point out that he may already know this, that between Cardiff and Swansea, where the electrification stops, the air quality actually deteriorates because of the diesel fumes. And I've measured it. I chair the all-body group on air pollution. There's up to 5 micrograms per cubic metre in the carriage because of the... So people are actually being polluted unnecessarily. And finally, he will be aware that Transport for Wales now has the skills infrastructure to deliver on the ground very speedily at a time that the Department of Transport has got multiple priorities and is focused on HS2. And so we've got the skills, we need the money, let's get the job done.
I thank my honourable friend, and indeed he makes a powerful point, and he does so having contributed a great deal within the debate on air pollution. As the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on air pollution, of which I am a member, I know full well the impact on communities of not having electrified rail infrastructure. And I'm also aware of the review which is being undertaken by the Welsh Government, especially with regards to investment within rail across South Wales and further beyond. So his points are indeed very, very apt. It is surely wrong, Sir Edward, that HS2 will reduce the London to Manchester journey time to 1 hour and 10 minutes, but London to Swansea will still take 3 hours. We must invest in and upgrade the Ebbw Valley and Maesteg lines, the Welsh Marches line, the Cardiff Crossrail, and more besides. Levelling up must mean that every part of our United Kingdom, not just Manchester, but Milford Haven and Merthyr Tydfil as well, not just Leeds, but Llanelli and Llandudno, not just Birmingham, but also Bangor and Bridgend. The £5 billion from Barnet consequentials would be a good start. And I hope that the Minister will give us some good news when he responds. Thank you very much.